Hey folks, it's Abby and I read 13 books in January with 4,420 pages. I listened to about 41 hours of audiobooking. My biggest book, surprising no one, is Children of Ruin, and this is 565 pages, so not too big. And my oldest book was an ebook, and that is The Blazing World, which was written in 1666. For the genres, I read 1 historical fiction, 2 non-fictions, a thriller, 4 sci-fi books, and 5 fantasy books. Then for the author's nationality, I read 2 books from a Nigerian American author, 4 books from authors from the United States of America, 1 book from various Swedish authors, and 6 books from English authors. Then for the format that I read the books in, I was loving ebooks this month. Dear God, I read 7 books via ebook, 3 via audiobook, 2 in hardback, and 1 in paperback. And now we went through the stats, let's go through the books themselves. They will be linked down below at the bottom of my description for content warnings for all of the books that I talk about here, so please do go check that out if you need it. The first book that I read in January was Frostlines by Shea. This was a gift to me by the folks over at Book Break, and this is right up my alley. So this is a non-fiction about the environment. Oh, wonderful. I'm here, I'm sat. And this is all about the Arctic. In this, Shea is going across the Arctic regions, across most of the Earth, and exploring the indigenous folks there and their practices, and also the immigration of people from more southern lands and how that is having an impact, and also the impact of climate change on these areas. The only place he doesn't go to is Russia. He tries to go, but for slightly obvious reasons, given that Shea is American, he's not able to get into the Russian Arctic. But he goes to all of the other places. So he goes to Canada, to Alaska, to Greenland, and to Norway. So he explores as much as he can, and it's fascinating to learn about the caribou and the reindeer. We get a first-hand account from the indigenous peoples who are speaking to Shea about how life is changing, about how there used to be plenty on the land for them to survive in their traditional ways, and this is going now. And so it's a mix of a book in terms of its negative. We are, of course, ruining the planet for ourselves, but it's also making a record from collecting these stories of what indigenous folks are willing to tell some white guy that's come up from the south about their livelihoods and how they have survived previously. I feel like Shea tackled this quite well. He knew that he was going in as a foreigner, an outsider, someone that they wouldn't want to talk to, and he was very respectful of that, and they knew he was making a book, so everything they told him they knew could be in here, and it was fascinating to learn about, and to learn about the migration routes of caribou, and to learn about the different fishing methods and how this has all changed. And this is for a bit of a niche audience, but if you care at all about the environment, that is the niche. And I really enjoyed this book. It is coming out this month. It comes out on the 12th of February, so if you want to go pick this one up, I am very, very glad I've read this. This will be staying on my shelves. Then the next book is one that I'm also very glad I read, but is very different, and that is Children of Ruin by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is the second book in the... I don't even know. Is it the Children of Time series? I don't know. It's a space opera series. You'd think I'd know these things. I love Tchaikovsky's writing. I love everything that I have read from him. I think the lowest I've given him is a 3.75. I adore his writing, and this is the second book in his most famous space opera series, and I always struggle with sequels. So the first book, we are following 2 different branches of humanity. They had left Earth that was having a lot of issues politically and environmentally, and they went off to try and establish bases elsewhere in the universe, and we are following them many, many years in the future. They've got cryogenic freezing and stuff, and we are following them trying to settle, and how this isn't working. They're having issues, technological, social, and it's a very, very interesting book. This one then jumps forward in time and uses the first one as a base, but also has so much more going on. In the first book we have sentient spiders. In this one, sentient octopuses, octopi, octopodes. So I really enjoyed this. No one is surprised. It's just such an interesting look at humanity, even though half of it is about creatures that are very much not human, and it's just so well done. The space side of everything is just so fascinating. I am ridiculously excited. I have already started, so I'm filming this of course in February. I had to wait till the end of the month. I have already started Children of Memory, which is the third book. Not too far into it, only about 50 pages as of filming, but I've already started it. I love Tchaikovsky, I love this series. Yeah, this was fantastic. Then a book that unfortunately wasn't fantastic, and that is Carve the Mark by Veronica Roth. This is my book that I read for the 10 books that are going to expire this year if I don't get to them, and I was so disappointed by this. This was just very generic YA, boring, oh god, they're clearly going to end up in love, just get it over with book. Like 2.5 if I, like, sure, it's fine. I did see afterwards, I looked at the reviews on Goodreads, and I did see a review from an author that I trust very much, A.B. Endicott, and she said that the second book is so much better than the first, and that you have to read the first to get to the second, and that this is disappointing and almost a waste of time, but the second book is really good. So I have some hope for this duology, is what I'm saying. But in this one we are following two characters, Syra and Akos, and basically one of them is like a princess in this world, and the other one is the son of a farmer and an oracle, and they end up linked in this world of violence and death. And the girl, if she touches anyone, causes them immense pain, and the boy, if he touches them, turns off any of the magical powers that are in this world. It's just not very good. Tyrannical ruling from the girl's older brother, and there's the intersection of the different communities, I guess, nations, talking, and I don't know, it just... But apparently the second book is better, so I have not lost all hope, and I'm hoping that the second book is... oh, I'm so glad I read this via audiobook, because I could just have it on in the background while I was working. I would have struggled to get through it otherwise. At least it's done. And it will depend on how the Fates Divide book 2 is as to whether this stays on my shelves. Then I read High Voltage by Chris and Jen Sugden, a married duo, and this is a very interesting book. I am expecting there to be more. It doesn't say it's a sequel, but just the way it ends and the way it's written. So we follow two people who are essentially detectives in a world that's never had detectives before. They've barely had the police force. It's in 1887, but in a fantastical 1887, a sci-fi one. The engineer army of Isambard Kingdom Brunel swarms across the capital, and this is ridiculous and mad and steampunk and fun and well written, and the detective story was interesting, and I enjoy the two main characters that are doing the research. I feel like they bounce off each other well, and it's just a fun read. This was just an enjoyable time, and if they come out with more books, I will look to pick them up. Then Run on Red by Noelle W Ihli. This is the third book I have read from this author, and I adore everything I've read from them. They write mystery thrillers, crime books, and this one is no different, but I will say that the other two I read had a fantastical element in them, and this one did not. So there is a difference. I still enjoyed it just as much. This one was also sent to me by the folks over at Book Break, so thank you so much to Book Break. This book follows two young women, two college age, American college age girls who are going out to a party in the middle of the woods. They're driving out there, and it seems as though they have a case of road rage behind them with this car that tries to run them off the road. And it gets much worse. They end up trying to chase them, trying to get them, and this is a story of the two girls trying to survive. It is very dark. There is a lot going on in here. Please do check out the content warnings for this one, because ooh, this could get some people. Please do check those out, but it is so gripping. I struggle to put Noelle's books down. I'll take a little bit to get into them, you know, like 20 to 50 pages, and then I'm like, oh, this is my life now. It's got its claws in me. So good, so good. Another great one was Making Money by Terry Pratchett. This is, of course, a Discworld read in the high 30s. I keep forgetting what number I'm at. And in this one, we are following Wolf von Lipwig, who we followed before, and he is now in charge of the bank and decides to introduce the concept of banknote. As always with Pratchett, this is a discussion on society and how we run society and the weird quirks of that, but it is also just a little bit of fun. This was not Gaspode. I was very disappointed. Not Gaspode. Different dog. If you've read the Discworld books, then you know. But this was not one of my favourites, but also still a 4-star read. But it was plenty enjoyable, and I'm looking forward to carrying on with the Discworld. Then I read The Terrible True Tales Saxons by Terry Deary. I may have got the title slightly wrong, but here you go. This is a kids book that I read on NetGalley. It is a collection of 4 stories that are fiction tales about children at the time of the Saxons, just trying to get kids interested in their lives, to kind of place themselves there. It was, of course, for an adult, a very quick read. Did have some questions about it. They mentioned the life expectancy of folks being like 30 or something in that bracket, and I'm like, well, that's because of the child deaths, like that's been debunked quite thoroughly, so I was quite surprised at that because Terry Deary is normally and that was not. But other than that, it's fun. I would give it to a kid. If I'd had a physical copy, it would be getting unhauled to a school. It was enjoyable enough. Then another ebook, and that is One Way Witch by Nnedi Okorafor. This is the second book in the She Who Knows series. It's a fantasy Afrofuturism. In the first book, we follow a daughter, and she makes a massive change to the world. In book 2, we are following her mother and how she is then reacting to the changes that her daughter has wrought, and how that has massively impacted her life and changed her. And it is a fascinating read. It's a short read, they are just novellas, but I really enjoyed seeing how the daughter's actions had changed the world that the mother is living in so dramatically, and how she is adjusting to that, and she has this trauma that other folks don't have from before her daughter's actions, and she's kind of trying to come to terms with all of that. And it is, as I said, it's short and sweet but very well written. Then I read This Way Up by Mark Cooper-Jones and Jay Foreman. I got this book essentially by accident. I bought a copy for my partner for Christmas, and this one came damaged, and so I contacted HarperCollins because I got it from the publisher directly, and they sent me a replacement and let me keep this one. So I thought, well, it's on my shelves, let's just read it. I love a map. Love a map. We love the Map Men. They are a YouTube channel, and me and my partner adore them. And this was no different. It is a very chill non-fiction. Some non-fictions can feel a bit stuffy and a bit thought-heavy. This one will teach you, but is very fun at the same time, very much like their YouTube channel. And I really enjoyed looking at these different maps. A couple of them I knew about already, about the intricacies there, but the details I didn't know. But also some of the other things that I just never thought to look into. It's very British, but they do leave little hints and tips for anyone who's reading it who isn't British and doesn't naturally understand certain things, like the BBC. They explain it. I mention that because there's a map for the TV regions across the country. So I really enjoyed this. This was like a 4.5 rating. I had a really fun time. I didn't want to put it down. I kept reading it into the middle of the night for some reason, so I should probably rate it 5 stars instead. This was very good, very, very good. If you enjoy fun education, this one. Even if you're like maps are fine, still, it's really interesting, it's fun to learn, it's engrossing, it's written in a really enjoyable way, so I had a fantastic time with it. Then I listened to Chain Gang All Stars by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. This one, I think it was detrimental that it was described as the new Hunger Games, for me, personally. The difference for me is that with the Hunger Games we got a lot more emotional grounding in the characters. You have a lot of emotional grounding in Katniss, and you have that grip on her as a person, whereas you don't get that as much with the various characters in here. And that's not a negative thing, but because it was compared to the Hunger Games, I was expecting to care as much about the characters as I did about those in the Hunger Games. It's just written differently, is all. So please be aware of that. The only similarity with the Hunger Games is that it's state-sanctioned violence, I guess. If you don't know, Chain Gang All Stars, we are following a variety of different perspectives, and it is people who have committed a crime, they are incarcerated in prison, and they have the option to sign up to go and compete in the arenas and basically be gladiators, and you fight to the death. If you die, you die, and if you survive, and you survive enough fights, eventually they free you. And it's following that, it's looking into, it's very much a discussion on modern day America and the incarceration issue going on there. So slavery was banned in the States for anyone who wasn't incarcerated. But if you are incarcerated, if you're in prison, if you're in jail, you can be treated as a slave. And this is talking about that, so there are footnotes in here. Here is a footnote that are actually about current modern day, even though this is like a fantasy sci-fi world, the footnotes are about current modern day US legislation and how that links in with what Adjei-Brenyah is trying to say about the incarceration system. So, for example, black folks and other folks of colour are much more likely to be arrested than anyone white, and they're much more likely to be treated worse in the prison. The fact that slavery was ended apart from in incarceration, but then black folks are more likely to be incarcerated. Oh look, enslavement. The discussion on violence as entertainment and how people get so... I guess this bit is kind of like the Hunger Games in that we have one perspective in here where it is of civilians on the outside. They aren't incarcerated and they just watch the show, it's televised, and they get so emotionally invested in these people, and I guess that is similar to the Hunger Games in that these people felt like they had like a connection to Katniss and to Peter, and they feel like they have a connection to the characters in here. It's interesting, the dichotomy of these people are criminals, but they don't deserve to be treated like this. But there's that dichotomy of like some of the crimes that they've done is like rape and murder. It's two of the worst things that we consider in our society, and they have the chance to go free by murdering more people. Some people oppose this system, and then people fight them saying, oh, what, do you just want these rapists to go free? It's like, no, I want them to be rehabilitated if possible. And it's just a fantastic discussion on the current state of incarceration in the United States. So it's a deep one. Like I said, I listened to this one via audiobook, which was really well done. The different voices for the different aspects were really well done. I didn't really feel the need to refer back to the book at all, so that's always good with an audiobook. And yeah, this was a heavy one. Then I read The Daughter Who Remains by Nnedi Okorafor. This is the third book in the She Who Knows series, and I don't want to say too much, obviously, because book 3, but book 1 is the daughter, book 2 is the mum coming to terms with things, and book 3, the daughter made a big change to society, and book 3 is the mum also doing something to society and making a big change, and it's her discovering herself as she does that and learning more about herself, about the magic that's intrinsic in her. And I love these. There's a lot of what I believe is folklore from Nigeria included in these books, and I am not familiar with that personally, but everything is introduced in a way that there's no need to be pre-familiar. Of course you will, I'm sure, get references and things and little moments if you are already familiar with it, but as someone who isn't familiar with Nigerian folklore, I was able to enjoy learning about it for the first time in these books, and I adored this trilogy so much. This book comes out this year in March, so I do highly recommend picking up the series. I really enjoy it. It's just, they are short, sharp, they are emotive and have a lot of depth to them despite the short page count. Then for some reason I picked up The Blazing World by Margaret Cavendish. So this is touted by some as the first sci-fi book. So I know that some people say that that is Frankenstein with Mary Shelley, while some others say that it is The Blazing World by the Duchess of Newcastle, Margaret Cavendish. And so I was very curious about it. It's not a very long book, but of course it's written so long ago that it is a little bit harder to read than modern works. And it was a very interesting book. So it is written in 1666, and when I first started reading I noticed similarities in this kind of crossing of worlds to what Philip Pullman does in his Dark Materials series, where you go to the north and you can cross over to different lands. I saw a lot of familiarity in there, so I'm wondering if that's where he got the inspiration from. They also had like polar bear people, and that made me think of Svalbard in his Dark Materials, so that was very interesting. And our main character becomes an empress, nice and easily, and she then spends a lot of time discussing science with her high-up scientific advisors and talking about the science of the world. And the reason this is so interesting now is that this is a woman who is talking about this in the 1600s, and yet so many of her scientific ideas are more advanced than the general ideas in the day, but also just the fact that she was knowledgeable of these when this was in a time period where, of course, Margaret Cavendish was a duchess, so privileged, and so she had more opportunities than a general woman or a general man, but she still was not supposed to be learning about science and wasn't supposed to be writing and all of this. And I found it very interesting that she has so much knowledge of these scientific ideas, and it was really interesting to see her put them down in this way and discuss them and try and figure out what could be the case and what might not be, and to do so in the guise of this sci-fi first ever novella. And what was also really interesting is that she puts herself in the story. So she's not the Empress, she's someone who ends up visiting the Empress from the Empress's original world, and they talk and they are able to travel between the worlds. And it was a very interesting read, and one that wasn't the easiest to read. Obviously this was written a while ago, so the language is different, but when you then sit back and reflect on the events, it's just so enjoyable, and I'm really glad I picked it up. Like, it's such a random thing to read, but I'm so glad that I did, and that I've added this to my reading repertoire now, because yeah, this was a great choice, a great read. Had a good time with it, and it is of course free on Project Gutenberg and stuff like that, so an easy one to pick up via ebook if you can and if you want to. And then my last read was Tomtar, which is a collection of fairy tales that they publish and republish every few years in Sweden. This is in Swedish, and it took me most of the month to read, so that is why it is the last book that I finished. I struggled with this one. To get a little bit personal, I was having some severe migraine issues in January. It was bad, and so that obviously made reading in my not even second language, I can't say that about Swedish, that's offensive to anyone that knows the language, was very difficult. It was slow going and slogging, and I read in English very quickly, so reading so slowly in Swedish is grating. I'm just very impatient, and I can't make myself read any faster because I don't understand the words. There's something as well with fairy tales where obviously they're going to mention words that don't come up otherwise. Like, why would I need to know... I can't think of anything now. But like, which troll... not troll, but you know, like which troll, fairy, magic, things like that have not come up in my current Swedish learning, because why would they? And so there was a lot of new words in here. But the stories themselves, separate from the Swedish, the stories themselves were really sweet, really interesting. Some of them were quite old, some of them were more modern, and there are illustrations throughout as well that are in varying different styles that I enjoyed getting to look at as well, because I'm like, oh, that's why they illustrate kids' books. I can vaguely understand what's going on if I don't get the words by looking at the picture. So yes, as always, I'm struggling with my Swedish, but I read it, I'm proud of myself, and the little stories were interesting. And that is every book that I read in January. Please do let me know down in the comments below, have you read any of these? And what were your thoughts on them? I'd also love to know if anyone's read Carve the Mark and what they think of it, because obviously I unfortunately didn't have the best time with it. What was your favourite book of January? Do this and I have to pick one. I think it might be This Way Up, you know. Like, you know what I enjoyed this month, but I think it might be This Way Up. It's my favourite book of January. Interesting. Thank you so much for watching, folks. If you'd like to see what I end up reading in February, then please do hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!